Kathy, why don't you talk to me about when you first met the guys?
From the beginning, it was the golden age of Bikeriders. I never felt so out of place in all my life. That's when I saw him for the first time. It took my breath away.
First question I wanted to ask you is about the meet cute. You know how there's a meet cute in every film where two characters meet and they're changed forever and you know they're gonna end up together. So I wanna talk about that first scene between the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
You look at him and you decide to get on that bike. Like you see him in the bar and then you see her and you're just like, I wanna get on the bike. And so I wanna know for you as actor, like what is he thinking? What is she thinking in that moment? And creating that moment on set between the two of you.
Well, I mean, I think for Kathy, there was an instant like, oh my God, who's this guy? But then, you know, that's kind of swallowed up by her meeting Johnny and the kind of, you know, all these men being incredibly boisterous and she's so intimidated and she leaves, you know, and then it's them coming out and kind of pushing her to do this thing. I think she's very glad she got on the bike, but I think it's that moment is quite complex. But I think she's like, who is this guy? He is such a enigma and a mystery and seems so sure in who he is and doesn't seem to need anything other than that, which I think, you know, makes her lean in.
Every female can relate to that. Sorry.
Yeah, the better of words, right? Like, it's a thing. So I think it was that, you know, and
What's Benny thinking?
yeah.
I don't want to give away what I was thinking in those moments, but it's when you look somebody in the eyes and you're thinking so much and you're wondering if they can read your mind, and it's the way you study their face. So that's all that
that you just did right there.
Yeah,
I felt that.
Yeah.
I'll get on the bike with you right now. Actually, along those lines, for you, like, did you create a backstory for your character? Because we get the feeling like he's this wounded bird, right? That everybody wants to protect.
It's always important, but especially with somebody who is as mysterious as he is, I wanted to know for myself, what was my family life like? What was my relationship with my father? Why am I the youngest in this motorcycle club? And what makes me the type of person that would seek adventure and freedom outside of that? And so it was figuring out a lot of those things that helped me to see him as a human being and not just as this image, you know.
This enigma.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, we're going back to that moment where she gets on the bike and she's taking a leap of faith. And it's like she's almost making a choice that's the riskier choice, right? So I'm wondering for you both as actors, what was a moment in your career that you sort of got on the back of that bike and you took a risk that changed, when you look back, changed the course of your life and your career?
For me, like one that feels very clear is deciding to do a play that I did called Prima Facie, which was, you know, I had.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, well, it's like 6 million. No, but then I think the Italian is prima facie.
Okay.
You're Italian.
Okay, I'm Italian.
And then you're Italian.
Okay. Keep going. It's the most brilliant performance. Did you see it?
I haven't seen it.
It was
but
like
I've
watching
heard.
Michael Jordan play basketball. It was unbelievable.
That's how
I went
much
with
it's so
Jeff
much
Nichols
fun.
and Michael Shannon to see that.
I know all the bike riders.
Sorry, I
team
cut
came
you
to board.
off.
No, that
Yeah.
was so lovely. Actually, that was so.
No, it's so brilliant.
But yeah, anyway, that was just the thing of being like, I had not done a lot of theatre and it felt like a risk in a sense of like, I knew a lot of people were going to be like, oh, really? You're going to do a one-woman show? Like, let's see how you fare doing that, you know? And also just me being like, I have no idea how I'm going to be ready for this, but I'm going to give it my all. And just knowing personally how much I grew from that, I think that is probably what I would say. Yeah.
And for you?
I would say it was doing a play as well.
Iceman coming?
Yeah, it was proving it to myself and
I think that's those moments though is when you're like proving something to yourself, then when that kind of switches.
100%.
In this film, Johnny's character watches The Wild One and he's like, I'm going to be Brando. I'm going to be a guy like that. I'm going to go and I'm going to do the thing and I'm going to start this bike club. What was the movie each of you watched that you were like, I'm going to be an actor? What was the first one you can remember?
There's a film called More Than Colour, which is a Lynn Ramsey film with Samantha Morton, which I remember. Educating Rita with Julie Walters was a big one as well.
I've never seen that.
But yeah, it's good. Michael Caine.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yeah.
I know you like the movies of the 50s, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this is right up your alley.
Yeah, it was for me so many films, but East of Eden was really inspiring when I was like 14, 15. Rebel Without a Cause, I was a young James Dean, but also Raging Bull and Taxi Driver, those films. So they really affected me.
Did Rebel Without a Cause come into your prep at all? Because I feel like this was like a young James Dean.
I don't
kind
think
of
I
thing.
wasn't intentionally. I wasn't watching, studying, but I think that there's certain qualities that he had that did sort of unintentionally, I guess, align. He was such an individual and incredibly spontaneous, and he had this spark in him that I think I didn't consciously think it, but I'm sure that it was in there percolating somewhere.
You don't belong nowhere else, so they belong together. But you're the man in charge. I'm Johnny. We're the Vandals.
So you're playing this character, Johnny, who sees the wild one when he's at home. And it kind of inspires him and changes his life in a sense. And he starts this bike club. And this is obviously Brando, who you've been compared to. So did you use Brando in your performance? And did you use Brando in prepping for your performance to play Johnny?
You know what? Jeff wrote that he was watching the wild one and he repeats the words that Marlon is saying.
What are you rebelling against?
What you got? What do you got? That's it.
Yeah.
And thanks for the cue. I remember of a cue.
Let me do the line for you, and then you can do it. What are you rebelling against?
What you got? I don't know. I can't do it. It's parody. But then obviously it was very important to Jeff that was he focused on that moment. So it would be foolish to not connect the dots. That was somehow an undertow. But certainly that this was a person imitating something that had come from that. That it was important. But then also Johnny's a real guy in real life as well. So it wouldn't be right to just parody Marlon Brando. So it was definite note. And I think in some aspects, I also kind of took the fun that I was playing with, whether people like it or not is kind of irrelevant. But the journey on and finding a voice for Johnny was influenced by that, but also been a little bit not sitting very well in his canvas. It was a kind of I wish, but not quite landing for him,
Actually, you answered my question because your voices that you come up with in film are stuff of legends. And you've said before, sometimes it's an amalgamation of people, even down to cartoons. And so if there was a little Brando, who else was in that voice and how did you create it?
Elmer Fudd, Bugs Bunny. I do like to play with accents because I think some people are very phonetic, sensitive about accents. Like they have to be really specific. And I get that. I 100% get that. But I also think that there's a leeway in transition, like in when you're trying to create a character, it's not just the voice, it's the way someone moves, it's the way that they look, the way that they infer, the way that their face moves, their shadow moves, their tics, the walk, everything is connected. And sometimes if you listened to people who you're talking to and you just put them on a tape, you get so much less of a full experience of that person just by listening to their voice. And I don't know if anybody's recorded themselves for the first time and they heard their voice back. It feels very dislocating. People tend to feel a little bit embarrassed by that because a voice on its own is not really character. So I do play in that world because I think you can get away with a lot of leeway. And in return, you adopt more character than staying absolutely accurate. It's a little bit like going to a foreign country and thinking you speak the language with the accent perfectly. You don't. So no matter how hard you try or how hard you work on something, and I do work hard, you will never, ever, 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 ever fool the dog that you're somebody else. At the end of the day, I think it's all fair to throw, in that aspect, with vocal silhouettes and camouflage and playing with that, why not swing big? So if you fall, it doesn't matter. My job is about being humiliated. You know what I mean? If I make a mistake, that's cool. But if you land something, sometimes you find the most lovely little runs with something, and it does somehow identify the character. So I get sometimes it's a little bit too much for some people. That's cool. But for the way that I operate, it's super important to try and find something different because I can't keep changing up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm one person, so you have to try.
So this Vandals tattoo that you got and you sent Jeff a text message?
I'm full of great ideas. Yeah.
Is it on your arm?
Yeah, on the back of my arm. It's a pretty cool tattoo, actually. In the main, wasted on the movie. So I thought I better get it,
It's awesome. Jeff has said that Austin said that you messed with him a little bit on set, that he expected you to come in with a certain energy, and before action and after cut, you were joking around a lot, and that he didn't really expect that. So I'm wondering for you as an actor, how does that free you as an actor to just sort of before and after, and then the fact that you're able to just go right into it? Does it free you as an actor? Is that a choice that you make?
I think myths usually asinine and circulate about people, normally by those who haven't really worked with them, or they just don't know. Or if they have, sometimes you have like difficult days. But on the whole, after doing this for 20 something plus years, I've never been one to like choke a weasel about my work. Like I absolutely am so white knuckling into the process where I'm completely, totally self-obsessed and absorbed, which is really sad because, at the end of the day, it is a team sport. So I think part of the gig is to turn it on, then switch it off immediately. And if you can't, I get it if you're having a tough day. I get it if your nerves are there. I totally get it. Sometimes we have to really focus and knuckle down because it's intimidating, or there's a lot of money at stake, or you just can't get there. That's fine to be quiet, and I'm respectful of other people that need that. But I don't need it. So if they're in the pocket and we're having fun, then when we shoot, straight face. When we're not, where were we? And that's, and Austin's good fun, actually. And another thing about him is he can adapt as well. Like I do like to mess around in between takes. Not stupid and focus on the work, but it doesn't all have to be so tight.
Before I let you go, I just have to say that line, the thing's going to do what a thing's going to do. 20 years from now, people are going to be talking about that movie moment. That was an insane line. Jeff
is a beautiful writer, a beautiful filmmaker. And he tapped into something really beautiful and nostalgic and wonderful. And there's no surprise that we all wanted to jump on board. And that's just one of his lines there, yeah.
I'm thinking of starting a writing club.
All those clubs do is sit around talking about motorcycles.
That's what we do.
Jeff.
Yes.
20 years ago, you fell in love with a book. You've been wanting to make this movie ever since. So you have to tell me what it was like for you as a director, seeing the Vandals all together riding down a road for the first time.
Oh, man.
And seeing it come to life.
Oh, I mean, I dream this stuff, right? So when I write these scripts, I can see it in my head. And sometimes things are better than what you see in your head. And that's what happened on the film set. And when you have Tom Hardy leading this pack of motorcycles with Austin Butler, looking just cool as a cucumber, it's the best thing you can have as a filmmaker. It is the manifestation of your dreams.
By the way, your casting is the manifestation of my dreams. Like my 3 favorite actors in all of the leads is incredible. So along those lines,
yes.
What was it like to have the modern day Marlon Brando and James Dean in your movie? Because they really quintessentially are.
It was pretty good. As a director, so much goes into casting because, as my career's advanced, I've had more opportunities. I get to meet more famous people, and they're all amazing. That's why they're famous. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're right for the parts. And what was incredible here was I found the right famous person who are stone cold movie stars that are right for these parts. And watching Austin and Tom together, the most difficult part in the editing room was, who to spend more time on because you just wanted to keep watching both of them. And then the fact that you cut away to Jodie Comer. We had these incredibly long takes of Jodie that we slowly had to trim down because people were like, you can't just have a minute-long shot of her face. But she's so compelling.
So compelling. And the tapes of the real life Kathy, it's insane.
You've heard them.
Yes, insane. I went down a rabbit hole. I saw the
That's
whole
fantastic.
Thing. It was quite amazing. So you talked in another interview about movie moments.
Yeah.
And you've used that phrase, movie moments of movies you've watched and been a fan of.
Yeah.
And you remember them. And we all remember 20 years later, we can recite the lines to our favorite movie. I'm going to ask you to choose one. I know there's probably a lot, but when you were sort of done with this film and you watched it, what was one moment from this film that you were like, this is a movie moment? Because I have a couple, but I would love to know what from your perspective.
I mean, the entire opening 20 minutes is just to set up one line, and that's Kathy talking about marrying Benny. That moment and the look on her face and the look on his face. I mean, it sets up the entire romance of the film. That's a movie moment. Tom Hardy being asked, "What about the bar? Burn it down." That's a movie moment. You got to stop me or I'll just keep listening.
Keep going.
No, I mean, there's that moment where Tom Hardy breaks a man's finger, and then he asks, "Are we good?" And they're a handful.
You're choosing different ones from me because the line for me of the movie, "Thing's gonna do what the thing's gonna do."
Yeah. That's one of the actual lines that I wrote. Probably like 70% of the dialogue is, taken from Danny's interviews. But as a filmmaker, you put all you have into a thing, and then it's just going to do what it's going to do. And that's Tom's line. And that's what it feels like making movies.
That's how my life feels. And I think a lot of people are going to relate to that. Like, no matter how you try, and the more you muscle something, the more it really is just going to be a free spirit and do what it's going to do.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about one of my favorite scenes is the scene when Tom's character asks Austin's character to take over the bar.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know you talked about how Tom was sort of in the dark and then he found his light, how this was like, you're like, this is what great actors do. You were worried that it wasn't going to be lit enough. But can you just sort of break down that scene a little bit and why that was so pivotal?
Well, that scene was pivotal, for the process of making the movie, because we did it in the first week. And on the page, that was just two guys standing in front of each other talking. But Tom and Austin, they turned it into another thing. They took it to another level where it really became about the way that this older character covets this young man. It's not a father-son relationship. He's looking at this young man and he wants what he has, whatever beauty or freedom he represents, he wants it. And the way that Tom approaches him and the way he gets so close to him, it is sexual, it is dangerous, and it's also ultimately heartbreaking because of what comes from it. And in the first week of filming, to have that, captured on camera, you're working on something that feels special.
Definitely, because that for me was one of the movie moments. Can we just go down the list of influences?
Sure. Yeah.
That you had sort of consciously or even subconsciously that came out later for making this film?
It starts with Goodfellas. There's a Michael Ritchie film that's pretty obscure. It's actually a made-for-TV movie, and I get the title wrong, but the incredibly true stories of the alleged Texas cheerleader murdering mom with Holly Hunter in it, based on a true story about a mom who tried to hire her brother-in-law to murder a cheerleader that was competing against her daughter. And the brother-in-law recorded all of their sessions together, and Holly Hunter turned all of that into real dialogue. And that's kind of what I was doing with Kathy's dialogue in this film. If you look at The Outsiders, Francis Ford Coppola, there's 3 minutes in the beginning of that film where it's all set to Gloria by them, and it's the best 3 minutes of cinema maybe ever. Special mention, Catherine Bigelow's first film, The Loveless, Willem Dafoe. That film's incredible. We got to talk about The Wild One. We got to talk about Easy Rider. After that, you just get into films that I love. HUD, Cool Hand Luke, The Hustler, all films from the 60s.
Great list.
Yeah.
I heard in a screening you were doing a Q&A, and the real life Kathy and Benny's child was in the audience.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you had met that person before, but did you end up having a conversation afterwards?
Sadly, not a conversation, but something cool is in process. So we screened at the Chicago International Film Festival. It was a great screening. But someone had come to the box office a couple of weeks before with a letter and said, I'm Kathy and Benny's son, and I'd like to talk to Jeff Nichols. Well, the studio got that letter and wasn't sure and didn't have it vetted. But when we got it, we gave it to Danny Lyon because he's the one that really knew these people. And Danny reached out and has flown to Chicago to interview him. And I don't really know the result of that yet, but I'm looking forward to finding out exactly what happened to the real Kathy.